Okay, so we've got the part all done, all 4 layers. And now it's time to put epoxy onto our masterpiece here, the actual wood structure that we're using as a form, which will be an integral part of this composite piece. So it's not just layers of carbon fiber, but we're actually using this wood as part of the composite. So we'll have 4 layers on the top side, and then we'll put 3 or 4 layers on the bottom. I'm not a composites engineer or a mechanical engineer. I'm really flying by the seat of my pants as to excuse me, what I think is going to be adequate. And I guess I'll find out when I'm driving my cycle cart around and see if it holds together. But I did build an airplane called the Long-EZ. It was designed by Burt Rutan back in the 70s, and it was an all fiberglass airplane, and there was no kit. So you just had the instruction book, and you bought all the raw materials from a place like Aircraft Spruce, and you just follow those plans. They put out a VHS video where they taught you how to do layups. And I'd never done any fiberglass work before, and so I just followed what I was taught on that video, and the airplane stayed together and still flying today. It's got well over 1,000 to 1,500 hours on it now. My buddy ended up with the airplane. My daughter's got new husbands, and the airplane got a new engine, and I got to start over. So that's my sad story. But from that experience of building that airplane, I felt like I really got to understand composites, and even though somebody else had done all the design, I kind of get the gist of how the layers work and how to use the 90 degree and the 45s in an effective manner. And so I've got a little bit of background. I'm not flying totally blind. It looks like I'm going to have plenty of epoxy here. I'm kind of surprised. I did go over just a little bit more because I knew I would need a little bit extra to put into this wood piece right here. So I'm putting a generous coat on that. And once I have this done, we're real close to finishing up here. Make sure I got plenty of epoxy on these top and bottom sides, because we're going to be lapping this over the edge, and that's always the hardest part, is getting that stuff to lay down over the edges. So it's easy enough to put on a piece of flat surface, but when you're getting it to go over the edges, that's a little bit different. So one thing you'll find that using these brushes, you oftentimes get some of the hair inside of your piece, so you have to kind of look for it. It's not so critical on this because it's going to be totally covered up, but it does happen. I mean, you have to expect it. Okay, so I've got this down on this freezer paper, and I'm going to get this freezer paper out of the way. And now it's time to cut the part out with the freezer paper still intact. Okay, so we're using that freezer paper as kind of a stabilizer as well. So I've got this all taped down. Let's get underneath it here. I'm using what I call my wet scissors here. And I just cut it just to the outside of my tape line. Yeah, if I had real sharp scissors, I could just drag it along here. Okay. Cut that and get it out of the way. Okay, 2 more cuts and we're ready for the last important part. So this is the beauty of doing it this way, is you've got this nice stable piece of carbon fiber layup attached to this freezer paper. And now I can pick up the whole thing and move it around, and I don't have to worry about the fibers changing or fraying or any of that. And I can move my piece around. So like I said, we're going to turn this around, and now all I got to do is get it centered, and we want plenty of overlap. Look at that. How easy is that? I'm going to be cutting it off directly on the edges. So, okay. So that looks pretty good. Now I can carefully take off my freezer paper. And look at that, that weave is nice and straight. Wunderbar. Throw this in the garbage can. It's all wetted out. And fibers are nice and straight. And we can see here I've got plenty of extra on both sides. And now comes time when I take my wet scissors and I cut along the edge to where it's just hanging but not touching the table, which is why I set it up as high as I did. And of course these scissors aren't nearly as nice as the other ones that I had. In fact, these are downright terrible. So even though I don't like doing it, I'm going to get my other nice scissors. Alright, let's do some serious damage here. Just look how nice that cuts. I should probably just buy another pair of this. Make sure I don't cut it too short. We want it to hang past the part. There we go. Like I say, this is going to be the hardest thing, is when we go over that edge, it's kind of hard to keep stuck down. And we may have to use some tape to kind of hold it into place. Yeah, let's do it on this side. Some of that epoxy off. We'll clean it with acetone really nicely afterwards. So, get our spreader here, and we'll just kind of go over this one more time. Make sure we got our epoxy down nice. That looks good. Yeah, getting these to stick is always the problem when we're going around a sharp edge. It just doesn't like to stay. So I can see small indents here where I have my holes cut, but that's not going to be a problem because they're actually going to get cut out. This doesn't need to be this long. Maybe one thing I could do here is cut a 45 so it doesn't have that. Oh yeah, see that helps quite a bit. Cut that at a 45 there, and it doesn't have all the pressure of trying to fight with that corner. It seems to help just a little bit. the edge wants to kind of start folding up. Yeah, I've got to come up with a solution here. Something I might do is put down a piece of wood and staple it up against there so it kind of keeps that tight. So I'll be thinking about that here while this starts setting up. But boy, I'm really happy with it. The weave is nice and consistent. And I think this is going to be a really nice, strong layup. So I just need to figure out something on these corners. So I'll be back to you in just a few minutes here with a solution. So I had the right idea, but my staples were too short. And I can't just afford the time to just run clean across town and buy longer staplers. So fortunately I have this nail gun that does, nails are about 1.5 inch, just brads. So let's see how that goes. So we'll put this down. Oops, wrong side. Helps to make sure I got the glossy side down. We'll make sure this takes that down with it without disturbing the fibers. Okay, that looks good. Looking good. Make sure I have the packing tape. Okay. But for the real chassis, I don't think this is the way to do it. I need to take a little bit more thought to how I'm going to do this when it comes to the real part. I'm thinking that it might be best to just lay one layer at a time on the actual part, make sure the edges get bent over. It'll be a lot easier. And then come from the back side and do all the, or come from the front side actually, and drill all the holes in the actual spar, and then flip it over and do the layup on the back side. Because the back side, that fiberglass or that carbon fiber, it stays on there, so it looks like the patch that they put on the actual original lightning hole. So the lightning holes don't go all the way through the part. It just goes through the thickest part, and then on the back side they put a little thin plate to cover it so that you don't have a lot of dust and garbage accumulating on these lightning holes. And so I'm just trying to simulate that. So that's added just a little bit of difficulty here, and I wanted a nice C-channel type of a design as well. So I've got these corners to deal with, and I'm probably gonna have to do a little bit more research to just see if I can find a better way to handle these corners. It's a lot easier when you bend a corner and you've got 6 inches or a foot of cloth that, you know, just has really tremendous sticking power, and so that you can stretch that and work that, and it holds that shape. But when you just have a short 3/4 of an inch here, that tension in the cloth to just straighten back up is fairly powerful, and it is greater than the adhesion of the epoxy when it's in its wet form. So that's why we do prototypes and see how well it works. So that's it for right now. We'll cut and wait for a day or two and let this cure, and then we'll come back and cut the holes and prepare it for the layup on the other side, which I think I'm just going to do 1 ply at a time, and I don't have to really bend over any edges. I've decided not to do that. I'll just take it out to the top and the bottom and call that good. So thanks for sticking around. Hopefully you've learned a little bit. I know I have.